I believe scarcely anything short of a Chinese wall or line of troops will restrain land jobbers and the encroachment of settlers upon Indian territory.
The major focus of conflict between Native American people and the Americans in the 1790s is land in Ohio. And the reason for that is, from the Native American perspective, they believed they had won the war, and they did not want to give up the lands north of the Ohio River to the United States. In contrast, the United States government was heavily in debt when the war ended, and it needed access to those lands to pay off its war debts. So it begins to speculate in lands north of the Ohio. When that occurs, tribes like the Shawnees and the Miamis and the Delawares and the Wyandots fight back.
The United States then is in a position where it has to demonstrate its power, to defeat the Indians and take the land from them that way. And a number of American expeditions are sent into Indian country, into the Ohio Indian country, and they meet with very limited success. And in fact, in 1791, General Arthur St. Clair leads an army into Indian country, which is roundly defeated by the Indians led by Little Turtle.
The Native American defeat of St. Clair is one of the most spectacular defeats ever suffered by the United States in all of its military history. About half of the standing army of the United States suffers fatal casualties in that one battle, and part of the reason is that the Americans are so poorly prepared. The Indians completely surprise them. They surround their camp, open fire, and the American regular troops stand and fight very well, but the militia and the 6 months volunteers just break and run.
After the defeat, President George Washington placed Mad Anthony Wayne, a Revolutionary War hero, in charge of resolving the problem.
Wayne learns from St. Clair's mistakes. One of the things Wayne learns is he's not going to engage in a battle with Indians until he's good and ready. What Wayne does is build a fort, supply the fort, march a little bit further, build another fort, supply the fort, and gives no opportunity for Indian peoples really to engage him in the field. As he gets close enough to the main Indian towns at the Maumee, the Indians feel they have to engage him.
In August 1794, Wayne led 3,000 troops against the Shawnee in the Battle of Fallen Timbers. This time the tables were turned. In about 40 minutes, the Indian forces were vanquished. In 1795, the Treaty of Greenville was signed by the United States and the representatives of 12 Indian nations in the Ohio Valley.
Under the terms of that treaty, the Indian leaders cede to the United States essentially 2/3 of what is now Ohio. And it's a recognition that the long struggle to preserve the Ohio River as a boundary to white settlement is now lost.
First of all, it opens up almost all of Ohio, except for the northwest quadrant, to white settlement. Secondly, and this may be even more important, gives the United States government opportunity to establish military outposts within the center of Native American country, and that's obvious what's going to happen after that.
The Treaty of Greenville is an absolute disaster for Indian peoples, because what had happened with the collapse of the British alliance, the whole alliance of Indian peoples in that area fragments. By the time they come to Greenville, they're fighting with each other. So it shatters this alliance. It'll shatter it for about 10 years. There's incredible social breakdown. There's drinking. There's murders within villages. It is a very dark period for Indian peoples.
More of us have died since the Treaty of Greenville than we lost by the years of war before. And it is all owing to the introduction of liquor among us. This liquor that they introduce into our country is more to be feared than the gun and tomahawk.
The Treaty of Greenville was one of many treaties that the United States negotiated with Native Americans, but failed to keep.
I think Indian people took the treaties more seriously than the government, and they took it much more seriously than the people on the frontier. As far as whites were concerned, the treaties were something to be disregarded. I think that many people in Washington, many of the leaders attempted to take them seriously, but Native American people took them very seriously.
Nevertheless, the fact that the United States made agreements with Indian nations in the form of treaties turned out to be an important precedent. Under the Constitution, treaties are honored as the supreme law of the land.
And Indian peoples might not have gotten the best deal that you could conceive of, but very often they got the best deal that was possible given the circumstances in which they negotiated. They held out for what they could. And it's turned out in the 20th, 21st century that this is still the basis of Indian rights. It's the thing that sets Indian peoples apart from any other American citizens. They have treaty rights. Nobody else does.